Well, it's actually changed quite a bit since the turn to the new millennium. So we've seen Victorian and true antiques fall away a bit, and vintage and retro has really taken over from antiques. The reason being, we feel as dealers and appraisers, is that those of us who grew up with our parents and grandparents who collected antiques are now looking at items that our parents collected rather than things our grandparents had. So we're looking back to the childhood years, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and just finding that these things are more comfortable for us to collect than antiques were. Basically, I think the reason being, antiques have a sort of mystique and an air of being very expensive and fragile and rare. And so they were items that you used for decorative purposes only, do not touch. So everything went into a parlor cabinet or a plate rail, and they were for display. They weren't functional. And today, people are looking for things to collect that they can actually use. Well, I think, as I said, I think it's because we're more comfortable with them. So we know that if we buy something that is vintage, that we're used to seeing our parents use in their homes, we don't feel quite as nervous. We're not as overwhelmed or intimidated by vintage pieces that we saw in our homes. And they also bring back an evocative kind of memory of your years that were wonderful years growing up with your families. So where you might not want to use your grandmother's Royal Albert dishes for a couple of reasons. First of all, they can't go in the microwave. Secondly, they can't go in the dishwasher. And since today people don't spend as much time having formal dinners, most of us unfortunately stand by the microwave with a plastic container and eat on our way out the door, or use something like this. And I'm just going to lean over and grab this for you. This is a 1960s Pyrex microwavable dish. So things like that, which are functional and not quite as intimidating to use. So we just feel a comfort level and that wonderful connection to things that were important to us as children and teenagers.
Oh.
The other aspect is that people aren't living in huge Victorian homes anymore. Homes are smaller. So whereas in the 1960s through 80s, people collected huge pine furniture and colonial style and spinning wheels, flat to wall cupboards, china cabinets, people don't have that room anymore. They don't want that much room anymore. So they want to be collecting things that are pretty, but they need to be functional because we don't have the space for all these pretties that look nice but do nothing. Oh my goodness. Well, if I'd been born rich instead of good looking, I would be collecting Dale Chihuly art glass. His pieces are absolutely astounding in their artistry. And unfortunately, even one of his smallest bowls starts at about $8,000. And a partial room installation can cost as much as $1 million. So as much as I love it, I actually collect pieces like this, which is a piece of Blanco glass from the 1950s. It's crackle glass. It's already looks as if it's all crazed and broken. So if, heaven forbid, I dropped it or somebody has a cat that knocks it off of a shelf, you won't be as heartbroken as you would if you dropped an $8,000 piece of Dale Chihuly. Well, no. I mean, how can I? I've been an antique dealer for 40 years. It's hard to choose a single item that I own. I have a dress that was made for my grandmother in 1920, which I still have. It's too fragile to wear, but it was handmade for a family event. I have her wedding band, which is a treasure. But as costume jewelry, which is one of the things that we specialize in as dealers, I would say this is one of my prized possessions here. And I can't see myself on the monitor here, so I'm not sure if you can see that clearly or not, but that is a Karl Lagerfeld dragonfly brooch. I absolutely love just the style and form. To me, it's just so beautifully crafted. The back is as lovely as the front. And one of the largest growing areas of vintage collectibles right now for men and women is vintage jewelry. So you have men who are going to vintage shows and they're buying vintage suits, vintage shirts, and then they're buying vintage cufflinks for French cuff shirts and tie tacks. And ladies are buying all kinds of beautiful jewelry. It could be something that's extraordinarily gorgeous like that, which is an Art Deco brooch. It can be elegantly simple. This is a beaded collar that was made in Hong Kong in the 1940s. They're all hand-strung glass beads. Or it could be simply elegant. This is a William Hobe necklace. Mr. Hobe made all of the jewelry for the Ziegfeld Follies. So vintage jewelry is small, it's functional, it's fun. And the whole idea with vintage is that you enjoy it. So instead of using a 19th century or a Regency wine glass that's worth several $100s, today people are collecting vintage glassware with pretty colors and lovely designs and things they can put in a cupboard and then use and not have to worry if something happens to it. Yeah, actually, the overuse of the word rare, Beanie Babies are not rare, Cabbage Patch dolls are not rare, Norman Rockwell collector plates are not rare. These are items that were mass produced to actually be sold and marketed as collectible items. They're fun, they're pretty, they're for the most part well made. But the rarity factor in more contemporary marketed collectibles is the fact that they're sold to collectors in order to spur you on to buy more. So if a Heirloom Dolls or Bradford Exchange is offering a particular type of doll and you can buy the entire collection, you're kind of compelled to because you feel like you need the whole collection. That makes them fun to collect, but they don't hold their value the way a 19th century, say, Brew porcelain doll would. So to me, the word rare should be saved for items which are truly rare and not items that are designated rare because somebody bought a Beanie Baby with an error in the spelling and feels that it's worth $500,000. I would love to encourage younger people to go out to their local markets, flea markets, thrift stores, Oxfam shops, boot sales, whatever it might be, and explore. We don't have the space that we used to do, but you can still buy a lot of wonderful things that you can use. And those are items that are invaluable because they're not dust collectors. You can actually use them and have fun with them. And this is it. You have to have fun with vintage. It's fun, it's frivolous, it's funky, and you don't have to be afraid of it. And make a connection with a dealer. Make a connection with an antique and vintage dealer who knows what they're selling. And then the internet has an amazing amount of information on it. A lot of it to be taken with a grain of salt, but basically, if you're needing to research something, you can find it there, or you need to go somewhere like valuemystuff.com, which gives you all the information you need about anything you might want to buy or have bought.